The sirens weren't meant for us. At least, that's what I thought the first time I heard them tearing up the mountain road. Red and blue lights bouncing through the pines like fireflies on steroids. But when two sheriff's cruisers stopped at the foot of our gravel driveway, I knew exactly whose fingerprints were behind it. Karen Whitfield. Even now, I can still see her smug silhouette in that oversized white Escalade, parked just far enough back to avoid direct involvement, but close enough to witness the show she'd orchestrated. She wanted us dragged out of our own home in handcuffs, our neighbors gawking, whispering, shaking their heads. That was Karen's art. Control through humiliation. I wasn't scared. Not exactly. 23 years in the Air Force had trained me to stand my ground. But fear has different flavors, and that morning mine tasted like cold iron. The dread of watching your wife get accused of crimes she didn't commit. The dread of knowing a petty tyrant had the power to turn your whole community against you with nothing more than a phone call. What Karen didn't realize, what no one in Pine Ridge understood yet, was that my wife was the wrong person to pick a fight with. But I'm getting ahead of myself. 2 years earlier, Sarah and I thought we were buying peace. A cabin tucked into the Colorado mountains, inherited from her grandmother, felt like the kind of retirement dream most people only read about in glossy magazines. Our place wasn't some McMansion with polished stone facades and solar roofs. It was weathered cedar, a steep pitch roof that creaked in heavy snow, and a porch that still smelled faintly of her grandmother's pipe tobacco. We sank nearly everything into renovations. New wiring, modern plumbing, oak doors with stained glass insets Sarah picked out herself. It was meant to be our sanctuary. Somewhere quiet. Somewhere we could breathe. The problem with sanctuaries is that predators love them too. In Pine Ridge, that predator was Karen Whitfield, self-appointed queen of the Homeowners Association. Picture a woman who wore pearls with her hiking jacket, who treated bylaws like scripture, who could turn good morning into a legal threat with just the wrong tilt of her voice. She and her councilman husband lived in a mansion that loomed over the valley like a castle, and she wielded the HOA like a weapon forged for one purpose: keeping people like us in line. The first time Karen came after us, it wasn't with sirens. It was with a manila envelope. I remember the morning. Mist rising off the ridge. Sarah kneeling on the porch steps to trim back flowers, her coffee mug steaming beside her. That Escalade rolled up without warning, diesel grumble echoing like thunder in the valley. Karen climbed out, her jewelry catching the sun as though she'd been dipped in molten gold. She didn't greet us. She didn't smile. "Violation notice," she said, shoving the envelope into my hands. "Authorized exterior modificación." Her finger jabbed toward our new door, the one Sarah had chosen so carefully. Custom oak. Stained glass panels that caught the morning light like cathedral windows. "That monstrosity violates community harmony standards," she snapped. $500 fine. 30 days to restore compliance. I felt my knuckles tighten around the envelope. The deck boards under my bare feet dug into my skin like they were holding me back. "This cabin was built before your HOA even existed," I said, trying to keep my voice level. "We have grandfathered rights. You don't get to dictate what door we use." Her laugh, high, sharp, rehearsed, cut through the air like broken glass. "Grandfathered rights don't override community standards, sweetie. You'll learn that eventually. Everyone does." Sarah stood then, not rushing, not raising her voice. Just watching. Always watching. I saw her hand wrap around her coffee mug, her thumb tapping lightly against the ceramic. A tell. She only did that when something dangerous was simmering beneath the surface. Karen noticed too, though she didn't understand what she was looking at. "You'll comply," she said, sliding her sunglasses into place like a curtain falling, "or you'll regret it." The Escalade rumbled away, dust trailing behind, and the mountain quiet returned. But it wasn't the same kind of quiet, not the peaceful silence of wilderness. It was the silence of a storm pulling itself together over the ridge. I turned to Sarah, needing to believe we could brush this off. "She can't really do this, can she?" Sarah's eyes stayed fixed on the bend in the road where the Escalade had vanished. Her thumb tapped once more, then stilled. "Let's find out," she said. That was the beginning. We didn't know it then, But Karen's envelope wasn't about a door. It was about power. It was the first thread in a web that stretched from fraudulent assessments to phantom repairs, from intimidation to organized crime. And it was the moment Sarah decided she wasn't just going to protect our home. She was going to burn Karen's empire to the ground. 3 days passed before Karen struck again. I was in my workshop, the hum of my table saw vibrating through the boards, when Sarah's voice carried from the kitchen window. "Jake," she called calm but tight, "we've got company." I killed the saw and wiped sawdust from my shirt. Outside, tires crunched over gravel, heavier than a single car. When I stepped into the yard, I saw it wasn't just Karen's white Escalade leading the charge. It was followed by a dented contractor's truck and 2 SUVs I didn't recognize. An entourage. Karen climbed out first, blazer crisp, clipboard in hand like she was preparing to auction our house on the courthouse steps. Behind her, 2 nervous board members shuffled like extras drafted into a scene they didn't want to be part of. And then came a stocky man in scuffed work boots, his tape measure already clipped to his belt like a sheriff's sidearm. "Mr. Morrison," Karen announced, tone dripping with false authority. "We're here for an emergency inspection. Community safety protocols require immediate compliance." The air shifted, pine needles whispering overhead, the stillness before storm. "Emergency inspection of what?" I asked. She didn't hesitate. "Anonymous reports of structural issues. Possible safety hazards. We can't allow dangerous conditions to jeopardize property values." The contractor grinned, circling the cabin like a wolf sizing up meat. "Yeah, these old places are disasters waiting to happen. Foundation cracks, electrical nightmares. Could run you 20 grand easy." My jaw clenched. But before I could fire back, Sarah stepped outside. She wasn't in uniform, just jeans and a t-shirt, but the shift in atmosphere was instant. She carried herself differently than the rest of us, like the ground itself bent slightly under her authority. "Do you have state licensing to conduct inspections in Colorado?" she asked the contractor, voice deceptively casual. He blinked. "I'm a general contractor. Done this work for years." That wasn't my question. Sarah's tone was even, almost polite, but I could hear the steel beneath. The man's smirk faltered. Karen jumped in quickly, trying to patch the hole. "Rick's been our trusted contractor for years. He knows exactly what standards we uphold here." Her eyes flicked toward the new locks I'd installed last week, the ones she hated. "Speaking of standards, those unauthorized security modifications are another violation. Master keys exist for a reason." Something hot surged in my chest. "You mean you want access to my home?" "Community safety requires oversight," Karen said smoothly. "If every resident just did whatever they pleased, there would be chaos." Sarah tapped her wedding ring against her coffee mug, once, twice, 3 times. A rhythm I'd come to recognize as her brain locking into combat mode. "Which board meeting authorized these security protocols?" she asked. Karen didn't flinch. "Emergency session, March 2021. Limited attendance due to health restrictions." Sarah tilted her head, almost smiling. "Fascinating. Because Colorado law requires 72 hours notice to all members for emergency sessions. And proxies. And documented minutes. Do you have those records with you?" The clipboard in Karen's hand suddenly seemed heavier. Her smile wavered. "This isn't about bureaucratic technicalities," she snapped. "This is about community trust." "No," Sarah said, quiet but sharp. "This is about law." For a long moment, no one moved. The only sound was a hawk circling overhead, its cry echoing through the trees. Finally, the contractor cleared his throat. "Maybe we should reschedule." Karen's jaw tightened, but she knew she was losing ground. She gathered her papers with stiff motions, muttering about residents who didn't respect authority. As they filed back into their vehicles, Karen turned, her final words carrying like poison on the mountain breeze. "You can hide behind loopholes now, but community standards always win in the end." The convoy rolled away, diesel fumes clinging to the silence they left behind. That night, Sarah sat at her laptop, her face lit by the glow of spreadsheets and scanned documents. Her coffee had gone cold. Her fingers moved with a precision that felt practiced, predatory. I leaned in the doorway, arms crossed. "You're not just reading HOA bylaws, are you?" She didn't look up. "Not anymore. What are you digging for?" Her lips curved into the faintest smile. "Patterns." I frowned. "Patterns of what?" Her ring tapped once against the mug. "Fraud." The word dropped between us like a live wire. Sarah finally turned, her eyes catching mine. Calm, focused, deadly certain. She thinks she's playing neighborhood politics. But this is bigger. And if I'm right, she's already hung herself. All I have to do is pull the thread. A chill worked its way down my spine, even though the night was warm. That was the moment I realized this wasn't just a feud about a door or a lock. This was a war, and my wife was already drawing the battle map. By the fourth week, it wasn't just Karen's smug face we had to deal with. It was the constant knocking. Monday morning, sharp at 7:30, the HOA treasurer showed up, wringing her hands about unusual vehicle activity in our driveway. Tuesday, the vice president arrived, worried about our suspiciously high electricity usage. Wednesday, the secretary practically hyperventilated about wildlife attraction because Sarah left birdseed on the porch. Different messengers, same message. Harassment wrapped in bureaucratic politeness. At first, I tried to laugh it off. A war of paper and gossip. But Sarah's expression grew sharper each day. Her ring tapping louder against her mug. Her silences heavier. She wasn't irritated anymore. She was hunting. Then Thursday morning brought the crack in the dam. A city electrical inspector, clipboard, boots, all attitude, showed up unannounced. "Got reports you're running unauthorized commercial operations," he said, eyeing my workshop like it was a cartel hideout. "Need to verify electrical compliance." I led him through every outlet, every breaker, every wire, pristine, all up to code. The previous owner had been an electrician. If anything, the place was overbuilt. After 20 minutes, the inspector finally muttered, "Appears adequate," though I'd recommend a voluntary compliance review. Sarah stepped in, her voice cool as glacier water. "Do you happen to play golf with anyone on the HOA board?" The inspector's neutral mask cracked. His shoulders shifted. "Don't see how that's relevant." Sarah's smile was small, lethal. "Just curious." By the time he left, I knew. This wasn't random oversight. This was coordinated. And Karen was the conductor. That evening, Sarah's laptop transformed our dining table into something between a war room and a courtroom. Columns of numbers glowed across the screen, highlighted, cross-referenced, dissected with surgical precision. 3 years of special assessments, she said, scrolling with quick, precise motions. Emergency repairs, infrastructure upgrades, security enhancements, $340,000 above normal dues. "Okay," I said, leaning over her shoulder. "Where'd it go?" Her fingers paused over the trackpad, then clicked into a new window. An invoice list. A company name I didn't recognize. Pine Ridge Construction Services, Sarah said. Except Colorado's licensing board has no record of them. But I did find something else. She pulled up a business registry, her face lit in the glow. "It's owned by Rick Whitfield, Karen's brother-in-law." The pattern fell into place, so suddenly it made my chest tight. Fake inspections, phony violations, harassment to force compliance, money siphoned through a shell company. "How much total?" I asked. Sarah didn't hesitate. $425,000 minimum. And that's just what I can confirm from paper records. I stared at her, the room spinning slightly. This wasn't petty HOA nonsense anymore. This was organized theft. Sarah closed the laptop softly, like she was sealing a deal. Then she looked at me, her expression stripped of every casual mask she'd ever worn. "Jake," she said, "it's time I told you something." She disappeared into the bedroom and returned with a leather case I had never seen before. She set it on the table, clicked it open, and slid it toward me. Inside was a badge. Not county, not state, federal. Deputy U.S. Marshal Sarah Morrison. Financial Crimes Division. For a moment, all I heard was the clock ticking on the wall. My wife, the woman I'd shared 18 years, 1,000 dinners, 1,000,000 little secrets with, had been carrying the biggest one of all. "How long?" I finally managed. 15 years, she said. Her tone wasn't apologetic, wasn't defensive. It was the steady voice of someone who had carried the weight too long to dress it up. Operational security. The kind of people I prosecute don't forget faces. They retaliate. I never wanted you pulled into that world. I exhaled, staring at the badge. My mind replayed all those work trips, the vague phone calls, the nights she came home with that faraway look in her eyes. It all fit now. You've been building a case, I whispered. From a moment Karen shoved that violation notice into your hand. Sarah's eyes didn't waver. At first I thought it was just arrogance. But when I dug into the finances, it became clear. This isn't neighborhood drama. This is federal crime. Wire fraud, insurance fraud, racketeering. Karen thinks she's running an HOA. She's running a criminal enterprise. The silence between us stretched, thick with everything unspoken, betrayal, relief, fear. Finally, Sarah reached across the table, her hand covering mine. Her grip was steady, grounding. I didn't want to drag you into this, she said. But you're already in it. And if Karen keeps escalating, it won't stop at fines or threats. She'll come after everything. Our home, our business, us. For the first time since we'd moved here, I felt the foundation of my world tilt. Not because of Karen's harassment, but because I realized Sarah wasn't just my wife. She was the storm that was about to sweep Karen off the mountain. Karen didn't retreat after Sarah revealed the badge. She doubled down. The next week felt like psychological warfare disguised as concern. Every morning at 7:30 sharp, another board member appeared at our door with some fabricated crisis. Unusual noise complaints, anonymous safety concerns, possible wildlife hazards. By Friday, I could tell the pattern wasn't about building a case. It was about wearing us down, eroding our will to fight. But Karen miscalculated one thing. My wife wasn't built to surrender. The first real crack came with Margaret Riley, our neighbor 2 houses down. She knocked one evening, trembling, clutching a manila folder to her chest. Inside were months of receipts, dues, and letters, all proof she'd been bled dry by special assessments. Her voice quivered as she told us how she'd nearly lost her home when Karen threatened foreclosure. Jake, Margaret whispered, glancing toward the dark road as if headlights might appear at any second. She told me straight to my face that people like me don't belong in Pine Ridge if we can't meet community standards. Sarah leaned forward, calm but razor sharp. Did you document every interaction? Margaret nodded. Every word, every check. I knew someday the truth would matter. I watched Sarah's expression harden, the kind of steel I'd only ever seen when we lost pilots overseas and she had to hold grieving families together. Only now, the grief was replaced by fury. This isn't harassment anymore, Sarah said quietly. It's extortion. Karen's next move came less politely. Saturday morning, I stepped outside to water the flowers and froze. Our irrigation lines had been slashed clean through, the beds ripped apart like some wild animal had gone berserk. Except the cuts were too precise. Surgical. Human. Spray painted across one of our cameras in neon orange were 3 words. Mind your business. I felt my chest tighten. Not fear. Not yet. Just that metallic taste of rage again. Sarah joined me, already photographing the damage with her phone. She knelt, measured the cuts, bagged fragments like evidence. Even in jeans and my old Air Force t-shirt, she moved with professional precision. Do we call the sheriff? I asked. Her answer was immediate. Not yet. She stood, eyes glinting. If Karen wants to escalate, let her. Every mistake she makes just adds to the file. By midweek, the intimidation escalated further. Strange vehicles parked across from our property late at night. Different makes, different drivers, but always idling just long enough to send a message. And then came a call from Margaret. Her voice shook through the receiver. Someone tried my back door last night. When the light came on, they bolted, but they left boot prints in my garden. I documented everything. I am scared, Jake. I've lived here 30 years, and I've never. I didn't let her finish. We'll handle it, Margaret. You're not alone anymore. When I hung up, Sarah was already at the table, her laptop open, her jaw set. Witness intimidation, she murmured. They just handed me racketeering charges on a silver platter. I wanted to be relieved, but the knot in my chest only grew tighter. Because while Sarah saw legal leverage, I saw frightened neighbors. People who just wanted to water their gardens without wondering if shadows at the window meant danger. The breaking point came Friday afternoon. I returned from the hardware store to find a fresh scar across our property line. A massive pine branch, chainsawed and dropped with surgical precision, had crushed 30 feet of fencing. Sawdust still clung to the air. Standing beside it, like a man showing off his trophy kill, was Rick Whitfield, Karen's brother-in-law. His chainsaw hung loose at his side, engine still humming. Behind him, a clipboard with an invoice already filled out. $3,200 for emergency fence repair. Community standards mandate proper boundary maintenance, he said with a grin too wide to be anything but deliberate provocation. Payment due in 15 days. I clenched my fists so tight my nails cut into my palms. You destroyed my fence, and now you want me to pay you to fix it. Accidents happen, Rick said, but I'd hate to see this escalate into a bigger problem. Sarah returned home just as he drove off, the scent of gasoline and sawdust still heavy in the air. She didn't rage. She didn't curse. She examined the fallen branch, studied the angle of the cuts, then glanced at Rick's inflated invoice. Perfect, she said softly. Perfect, I snapped. They're tearing our lives apart. Her eyes met mine, calm, steady, terrifying in their certainty. Because now it's no longer numbers on paper. It's property destruction, intimidation, extortion. And those are crimes juries understand. That night, the two of us sat at the table surrounded by folders, photos, and spreadsheets. I should have felt reassured by Sarah's clarity, but instead I felt the weight of something heavier. I wasn't afraid for our home anymore. I was afraid of what this war was doing to us. To Sarah, she was burning hotter each day, chasing justice like a predator stalking prey. And part of me wondered, what would be left of her once this was over? But when she looked up, her eyes softened for just a moment, enough to remind me she was still my wife under the steel. Trust me, Jake, she whispered. We're almost there. The sirens came at dawn. I was tightening a loose hinge in the workshop when the sound bled through the pines. Two cruisers, engines straining against the incline, lights flaring against the pale sky. Sarah stepped out onto the porch, coffee mug in hand, posture deceptively casual. Behind the cruisers, parked like a vulture waiting for carrion, was the white Escalade. Karen. The deputies climbed out first, hands resting on their belts. Professional. Neutral. They'd been told a story, and they believed they were walking into a domestic dispute. Karen emerged next, sunglasses perched high, voice pitch from maximum drama. Officers, thank God you came, she said, clutching her pearls as if she were playing a role in some soap opera. These people have been terrorizing our community. They changed their locks to hide evidence. They've threatened me personally. I demand an immediate search. Her finger jabbed towards Sarah like a spear. She's dangerous. She's conducting illegal investigations, harassing innocent neighbors. You need to arrest her. I felt that familiar metallic taste in my mouth, rage rising, but Sarah lifted one hand, calm, silent, warning me not to move. Deputy Martinez turned to me. Sir, we need to hear your side of these allegations. Before I could answer, Karen cut back in. Don't listen to him. He's part of it. This whole house is a threat to the community. Her voice rose, cracking, desperation leaking through her performance. Check the locks. They've installed surveillance. They're hiding something inside. The deputies shifted uncomfortably. They knew this was spiraling. They also knew they had to follow procedure. That's when Sarah stepped forward. Officers, she said, her voice steady, low, controlled. Before this goes any further, I should clarify something about jurisdiction. Her hand slipped in her back pocket, and for a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. She pulled out a leather case, flipped it open, and sunlight caught the gold of the badge. Deputy U.S. Marshal. The silence that followed was the kind you only hear before avalanches. My name is Deputy U.S. Marshal Sarah Morrison, Financial Crimes Division, she said, her voice ringing clear in the morning air. I have been conducting a federal investigation into systematic embezzlement, insurance fraud, and racketeering within this HOA. The deputies froze. Martinez's eyes widened as though the ground had shifted under him. Johnson instinctively straightened, posture stiffening as if standing at attention. Karen's face drained of color. She took a half step back, her perfect nails clutching the edge of her blazer. "Ew," she stammered, her voice cracking. "You can't just... This is abuse of power. She's lying. She's twisting this against me." Sarah didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. "Filing false police reports is a felony in Colorado," she said softly. "When those reports are designed to obstruct a federal investigation, they become federal crimes. Serious ones." Karen's mouth opened, closed. Her hand shook now, the performance unraveling. Martinez cleared his throat. "Marshal Morrison, we had no knowledge. No reason you should have," Sarah said. She snapped her case shut, slid it back in her pocket, then turned her gaze on Karen with surgical precision. "But now that you're here, perhaps Mrs. Whitfield would like to explain why she's been siphoning hundreds of thousands of dollars from her neighbors through fake assessments, shell companies, and manufactured crises." The escalade suddenly seemed too small for Karen to hide behind. "This is a lie," she shrieked, but the shrillness betrayed her. "They're fabricating evidence, twisting community standards into standards." Sarah cut in, sharp as glass. "Community standards don't override state law. They don't excuse extortion. They don't justify stealing homes from families you targeted with harassment until they sold below value." Every word was a hammer, nailing Karen into the corner she'd built for herself. "You don't belong here." Karen spat, her last desperate play. "People like you." And there it was. The mask ripped clean away. The poison she'd always hidden behind bylaws and fake concerns spilled out into the open. Sarah stepped closer, her voice dropping to something almost tender. "You're right, Karen. Some people don't belong here. But it isn't us." For the first time since we moved to Pine Ridge, I saw Karen silent, stripped of her weaponized confidence. Just a pale, trembling woman in the middle of a mountain road, realizing the empire she'd built on intimidation and theft was collapsing. The deputies exchanged a look. Johnson spoke first, voice level. "Mrs. Whitfield, we'll need you to remain available for questioning." Karen shook her head wildly, sputtering excuses. But the fight was gone. I exhaled slowly, the air sharp and cold in my lungs. For weeks, Karen had been the predator circling us, her shadow stretching long over our lives. But now, in the quiet that followed, I realized something had shifted. The predator was standing beside me, coffee mug still in her hand, badge catching the light. And she was my wife. The arrest didn't come right away. That was the hardest part for me to understand. I wanted Karen hauled off in handcuffs that same morning, her jewelry rattling against steel like justice, served hot and immediate. But Sarah explained it differently. "You don't win wars by charging into the first skirmish," she said as she spread documents across her dining table. "You win by letting the enemy hand you every weapon you'll need." And that's exactly what happened. Over the next 2 weeks, Karen unraveled in real time. Every frantic email she sent, every emergency meeting she called, every threat she delivered to our neighbors, it was all documented. And every desperate move gave Sarah more leverage, more proof. By the time federal agents walked into the Pine Ridge Community Center with subpoenas in hand, the case wasn't just airtight. It was surgical. I'll never forget that night. The room smelled of burnt coffee and old carpet, tension so thick it hummed against the fluorescent lights. Karen stood at the front, her last allies gathered like loyal subjects clinging to a sinking throne. She raised her voice, accusing Sarah of corruption, insisting the real crime was government overreach. That's when Sarah rose from her chair, calm, certain, badge in hand, and in front of the entire neighborhood, she laid the truth bare. The missing funds, the shell companies, the forced sales, the families pushed out so Karen could line her pockets. I watched as neighbors who once whispered about our troublemaking now leaned forward, faces hardening, realizing they had been her prey all along. And then came the sound I'd been waiting for, the metallic snap of handcuffs. Karen's protest dissolved into something pitiful, a whimpering echo of the tyrant she had been. Rick tried to slip out the back, but the agents were ready for him too. When the doors closed behind them, Pine Ridge finally exhaled. Justice doesn't arrive like fireworks. It doesn't taste sweet right away. It comes like the slow thaw of spring, steady and almost unbelievable after a winter you thought might never end. The weeks that followed transformed our community in ways I never expected. Neighbors who once avoided eye contact now lingered on the street to talk. Margaret Riley, the widow who'd nearly lost her home, became the face of our new scholarship fund. Tom Buckley, the retired accountant, was elected HOA president and swore in front of everyone that no decision would ever be made behind closed doors again. Our cabin, our battered, stubborn, cedar-sided cabin, became something more than a home. It became a symbol, proof that intimidation could be resisted, proof that corruption wasn't invincible. For Sarah, the aftermath looked different. She was promoted, recognized by her division, asked to lead a task force on white-collar crime. But I could see the weight she carried, too. The late nights staring at case files, the 1,000-yard gaze when she thought I wasn't looking. One evening, months after the trial, I found her standing on the porch at dusk, badge in one hand, coffee mug in the other. The mountains stretched out before us, endless and quiet. "You ever regret it?" I asked, "not telling me who you really were?" She didn't answer right away. The wind moved through the pines, whispering secrets older than any HOA bylaw. "Sometimes," she admitted finally, "but if I'd told you, you would have lived with a target on your back long before Karen ever showed up. I kept it quiet because I love you, Jake, and because some battles aren't meant to be fought with both of us on the line." Her eyes met mine then, soft and human beneath all the steel. "And yet here we are," I said. "Here we are," she whispered. "Karen Whitfield is serving 4 years in federal prison. Her empire, her Escalade, her shell companies, her vacation condo in Aspen, was dismantled piece by piece. The money she stole is back where it belongs, in the hands of the family she preyed on. And Pine Ridge? It's no longer a battlefield. On summer evenings, you can hear children laughing instead of SUVs idling like predators in the night. The garden we rebuilt after the vandalism overflows with vegetables that neighbors share freely. Potlucks replaced emergency meetings. And the only thing painted on our cameras now are smiles. Sometimes I walk the fence line and find myself staring at the mountains, remembering the sirens, the spray paint, the cold grip of fear in my chest, remembering how close we came to losing everything. And every time I hear Sarah's voice in my head, calm and unshakable. Let her keep escalating. She's building my case for me. She was right. Karen built her own gallows with every petty act of tyranny. All Sarah had to do was hold up the mirror. We learned something on that mountain. That justice isn't always loud. Sometimes it looks like a badge glinting in the morning sun. Sometimes it feels like neighbors rediscovering their voices. Sometimes it's as simple as 2 people sitting on a porch, holding coffee mugs, knowing they survived the storm. And sometimes the sweetest revenge isn't revenge at all. It's peace.